Good morning. You may be seated. My name is Ava King. I use she, her pronouns, and I have been waiting for this moment my entire life. All right. Now that's a tad dramatic, but honestly, it's probably better for you to get a sense of who I am before I start my sermon. The truth is, while I do enjoy the power, I have been looking forward to preaching as a senior on Youth Sunday ever since I can remember. As just a little All Saints kid in choir and children's chapel, looking up to the big kids who got to do cool things like command the attention of the congregation and wear a white robe and stand at the pulpit. I have preached before in a group, but today feels different. Probably because today is my last opportunity to speak to you as a youth member of this church. Today is the culmination. It is my chance to act like I know what I'm doing, get up here and wow you all, just strike you dead in your pews with my wisdom and, let's be honest, pure genius. Can you tell I have high expectations for myself? So, as you might expect from someone who's always wanted to preach, I've had a lot of ideas of what I should preach about. And I've written some of them down over the past years, months, and weeks. Actually, I've written a lot of things down. I jot down quotes from books I read that I find meaningful, quotes I find funny. I write down ideas for TV shows and jokes, even advertisements I think are ridiculous. All these things that I somehow think will be useful to my future self. So for that reason, I would like to title my sermon, An Ode to My Notes app. While, believe me, there was a lot of good stuff in there, there were even some suggestions that I no longer remember the intention behind, like Tangled. And while I'm sure a sermon about the 2010 Disney film that I'm convinced was the first movie I ever saw in theaters would have been magnificent, I would like to talk to you today about belief. And not just a belief in God. For me, believing in God is, irrelevant is the wrong word, but there is just so much more that I'm concerned with on a day-to-day basis than a higher power. Like the world. How do I believe in this world? This world sucks sometimes. Actually, a lot of the time. And if you choose to constantly pay attention to the news, you could make a pretty strong argument that it sucks all of the time. For me, and I'm sure many of you, the recent threats against All Saints, especially as a queer person, have been a very stark reminder of just how much this world sucks sometimes. When I began to process what happened, I felt a lot of things, but two emotions stood out to me. First, I felt fear. I started to consider that I will spend the rest of my life knowing there are people who want to hurt me and the people I care about because of who we are fundamentally, as, to use some church language, beloved children of God. After the fear, I felt anger. I realized that I live with an undercurrent of anger in me that rages constantly against all of the truly messed up things in this world. Events like the threats of 2 weeks ago bring this anger to the forefront. So how can I believe in a world that makes me so afraid and so angry simply by living in it? I do not want my life to be defined by fear or anger. At 18, I feel that I have lived so much already, and yet I am ever conscious of all the life I have yet to live. And I refuse to live a life defined by these emotions. As author John Green says, I want to fall in love with the world anyway, to let it crack me open. I want to feel what there is to feel while I'm here. What a truly gorgeous sentiment. But despite the fact that I do want to fall in love with the world, I cannot seem to believe in it. This reminds me of another John Green quote. Perhaps I should rename this sermon an ode to John Green. He says people, quote, want to know if I believe in God, and I can't answer them because I don't know how to deal with the questions in. Do I believe in God? I believe around God, but I can only believe in what I am in: sunlight and shadow, oxygen and carbon dioxide, solar systems and galaxies. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is how I can believe in God if I believe around God instead. Believing around God means that I cannot say for sure that I believe in God. I still embrace my doubt, but I am also able to acknowledge that I want there to be something more than what I can easily believe in. Like John Green, I struggle with this question, but rather than the word in, I struggle with the word believe. Belief feels too finite, like an acceptance that your mind will never change. And while I am a woman of many things, I am not a woman free from doubt. I could quote Walt Whitman here, or F. Scott Fitzgerald, but why quote a dead white man when I could quote me? I often think to myself, I don't believe in absolutes, except when I do. I think the world is far too complicated for black and whites. The world is constantly breaking binaries, whether that be gender, age, or even the binary idea of good versus evil. But also sometimes I do believe in absolutes. There are some things I firmly believe are only wrong, like transphobia or racism. How do I reconcile these opposing ideas? How do I firmly stick to my values and yet also leave room for the gray? For me, belief is too much of an absolute. But now I'm left with the same dilemma. I can't believe in this world, but I can't live a life defined by pessimism either. You see why I love paradoxes, or maybe I hate them. Okay, my brain hurts, I'll stop. I have found that I don't want to use the word belief anymore, because even if I try to make it fit my wishy-washy, doubt-filled, paradoxical definition, it doesn't feel right. I cannot bend belief to suit my whims, so I must leave it behind. Ultimately, ironically, in my departure from belief, I have found faith. Well, okay, now she's gone completely crazy, you might be thinking. Aren't belief and faith synonyms? So let me repeat myself. In my departure from belief, I have found faith. Well, I propose that yes, they are synonyms, and no, they do not mean the same thing. Allow me to explain. Instead of turning to the humanities to help me with my justification, I'm going to turn to mathematics. In calculus, there's something called an infinite series. A series is a sequence of numbers added together to create a sum. So, for example, I could make up a series that goes 1 plus 2 plus 3, and I could stop right there, and that would be a finite series, or I could keep going. Plus 4, plus 5, plus 6, and on into infinity. But here comes the tricky part. Some infinite series still have sums. Now, these series are a lot more complicated than the arithmetic we just did, but they exist. Trust me, I just took an AP test on this. I like to think of faith as the sum of an infinite series. I know that there are an infinite number of terms being added together, and it makes no sense that I could get a value from that, but I do. And that makes me want to fall in love with the world all over again. I do not believe that an infinite series will converge. That is too hard. But for some reason, faith is embracing enough of the paradox that I can have faith that we will find the sum. This analogy helps me because when you find the sum of an infinite series, there are other calculations you can make that contextualize the answer you get. They make you even more sure that faith was the right approach because all of a sudden, your answer starts working. When I have faith in the world, the answer I get is that I become a better person. I love deeper. I cling tighter. And perhaps more importantly, I want to change more. That is the most beautiful outcome of having faith to me, a motivation to beget change. When I have faith in the world, I am simultaneously saying I have faith in a better world, and I am making a commitment to do what I can to bridge the gap between the world we are in now and that new world. This world is really messed up, but sometimes I learn something wild. Like the other day in physics class, I learned that an electron is both a particle and a wave, and no, I don't really understand what that means, but it reminds me that there is something incredible about this world. This world is worthy of my faith. So, I'm not going to tell you to believe in the world. I'm not even going to tell you to have faith. But you have to have something, because we have a lot of work to do, my friends, and you're going to need something to sustain you on your journey. My senior quote for the yearbook was from Mary Oliver, and it reads, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" I think I might have an answer. I'm going to have faith. The rest will come. Right?